Hi, I'm Tim Corpus, composer and sound designer, and today we're going to take a look at my score to the animated short film Immortals by Daniel Robinson. So I started this project back in the winter of 2020 and early 2021, and it was just a lot of fun to do kind of a big orchestra soundtrack for this animated short. It's really inspired by things like Halo, and of course there's like this John Williams sound, Hans Zimmer. They were big fans of the Avengers music, Alan Silvestri. So that was what they were looking for this short film. So next week I'll post the full film now that it's finished and I can post it. But right now we're going to take a look at what's going on inside and just a few highlights of what I really enjoyed writing in this short film. So let's jump into Reaper. This is the DAW that I use. I've been using Reaper for a long time now and love it. I'll talk more about my setup in here some other time. But this is the Imperial White theme in Reaper 6. I think I'm running 6.32 right now. So as you can see, there's a lot of different lines and things going on in here. Reaper makes it super easy to input markers and zones, areas, things like that to keep track of what's going on. Usually when I start a score, I just watch it silent for a few different times, and I'm marking throughout. You can see a lot of these are colors. They're color-coded. I have like my own strange system that I use. Usually yellow is important dialogue that I want to highlight. But these markers are all input, and then I create these zones for different spots that I know I want to highlight as well. For instance, there's a flying battle over here. I also do this when I'm working on pop music. Maybe I'll put the verse, chorus, drum hits, fills, things like that so that I can find my way around. So I was asked when I came on the project to write just about 5 minutes of music for the first half of the short film. And I started with planning out the theme. For me, it was super important that our heroes have a really simple theme that would be easy to be reused throughout, their calling card. And since we were looking for a really big sound, we're using full orchestra here. In this, I'm using the Cinesamples core. We have the winds, brass. I think some of those are the Sonor brass. We'll talk about that later. And then the harp, percussion, and the core strings. And then I have a few markers here with the Spitfire Labs strings. There's some really cool sounds that I wanted to use for some of these scary moments in the piece. And then I have some synthesizers as well as electric guitar throughout. But let's take a look at the main theme. So this is the main theme. I wrote this for really highlighting the brass section. So you have that ba-da-da-da-da, that's the main theme there. And of course underneath we have lots of drums. In the strings we have this upward ascending scale, and then also actually in the lower strings there's an ascending scale as well. That's really the main harmony that we're using throughout. It's a very simple piece. I didn't do anything crazy. But there was a specific moment that they really wanted the theme to come out. So let's take a look at where that hits. So this is the main theme at its like fullest potential with the full orchestra and the highlight of the credits, the title screen. I'm using these kind of punchy brass sounds. You can hear this. Let's check that out. Let's just highlight the brass only. So you can see there, it's really punchy with the brass. The strings are helping it feel more legato. Of course, this is a MIDI orchestra, so if it was a real orchestra, I'd have to orchestrate this differently. But sometimes when you're pressed for time and you have to just make it work, you make it work. So later on, I bring the theme back. There's a really cool flying battle, very Star Wars inspired. So I decided to take the main theme and augment it. So it's going to be twice as long, kind of flowing at half speed. And to make it kind of cool, edgy, added in some electric guitar. So let's take a look at how I augment that theme. It's a great way to just kind of preserve the theme. The audience knows it, we're familiar with it, but it sounds a little different. That electric guitar, you can see the Epiphone SG behind me. I use that. I also sometimes use a Fender Strat, which is great, but this time I wanted that kind of darker tone. So let's isolate that here. And then I added in a MIDI guitar to make it even punchier. So I thought that worked really well. It builds up the scene, builds up the anticipation that leads to this other kind of fight scene on the ship, which is much more dramatic with all sorts of percussion. Speaking of percussion, I'm a percussionist, and I love writing for percussion. I love writing for timpani, and one of the things that was really fun for me in writing this was paying homage to some kind of Star Warsian John Williams sounds. So this is in the prologue. There's a little bit of a battle scene, kind of like how in Lord of the Rings they tell the story of a battle from before. I added in all sorts of brass and percussion to kind of punctuate this battle. Let's take a look at that. So this is the percussion section here. I usually use them in kind of a brownish red. I love writing for timpani. I'm a timpanist myself. I've written timpani concerto, book of solos, quartet for timpani. And so it's a really dramatic instrument that I thought worked really well, and then kind of supported by those trumpets, the dega dega. Another sound I wanted to highlight was the synthesizer that I use to get this very electronic feel. Of course, this is in space, so it kind of makes sense to have that. And this synthesizer, let's take a look at that. We pull that up here. Let's just call it synth. This is Native Instruments Analog Dreams 2. It sounds really great. A nice kind of classic 80s style synthesizer. We've got a delay on here and some EQ, but what I want to show is how I use these synth effects. So here is a moment where we're learning about the big bad guy. This is also in the prologue, and I wanted to add some nice womp 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 sounds using a low pass filter. So here we are, we're about 2 minutes in, and we get this nice big synthy sound. So if we take a look at that, Let's pull up the envelope for this. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on. And isolate this out. Again, this is just the Analog Dreams 2.0. So that's such a cool effect, adding the panning in, and then of course there's this EQ. So if I show you the EQ here. So those are some of the highlights to Immortals. It was a lot of fun to work on this project with these guys. Super impressed with their animations. As you can see in some of the video that I was showing, that's the early version, not colored, lighting not inserted, things like that. I'll include in the description below some of the samples that I used with this, including those free Spitfire Lab samples. Check those out. And next week, I'll go ahead and post the full video on the YouTube page, so be sure to subscribe so you can check that one out too. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.